Get to the church blind! Get to the church blind! Go! Now!
I'm Pete Mitchell, and he's Peyton Jones, and you're listening to Hardcore Church Planning, the companion podcast for the Church Planner Podcast and Church Planner Magazine. Each week, we'll bring you interviews from planners who are in the trenches making it happen right now. These active church planners bear it all, share their successes, their failures, and what they'd wish they'd known when they were first starting out. Listen in to discover how God is working in their church plans.
You know, when I have a large project at home, sometimes it makes sense to do it by myself. At other times, I actually save money in the long term and have a much better solution if I use an expert. It's really not that much different with church planning. Church planners who focus on building their core team and actually planting the church and partner with portability experts like Portable Church Industries hit the ground running. Yes, you may have to raise more funds up front, but let me tell you something. If I could go back in a time machine and do one thing different in all the churches that I planted, I would go back and have invested that money in Portable Church and all of the super cool kit that they give you to make the volunteers and their lives much, much easier. Trust me, your volunteers will feel invested in, and they're going to give you more of what they got. And that time where people are setting up is going to be a time where it sets the atmosphere for you to thrive. If you're thinking about launching in the next 6 to 36 months, we encourage you to check them out at portablechurch.com.
Hey, church planner, this is Peyton Jones. Welcome back to Hardcore Church Planning. My guest today is a friend, a colleague, for you, a man of mystery. For me, I know who it is. It's my show. Of course I know that. My guest today is a guy who's kind of a legend in the coaching world. His name is Dino Sinisi. I said it right?
Nope.
Sinesi.
Nope.
Seen easy.
Now, if I ever change
Senesai.
it, I'm changing it to that right there. What you just said, I'm changing it to Seen Easy because that just feels like a guy you want to hang out with that guy.
Sinesi?
Sinesi.
You know, I was literally going there next. Except I don't know if I would have done that. I think I was going to do the Sinesi because I mess about a lot. So all this time, I've been calling you Dino Sinisi, literally, and it's Sinesi.
Yeah. Well, if you have a name like Sinesi, you learn as a young man not to be freaking out over the way people say Sinesi.
Hey, we got enough problems, man. We're bald and short. Like
that's right.
We can't be sweating our names. I get Preston, Peter, you name it. So I'm with you. Clayton. How do people hear Clayton out of Peyton? I've never figured that one out. Anyways, Dino is on the team with me on, we're actually on the planter care team. Dino heads the coaching side for church planners nationwide for the SIND network for the North American Mission Board. I'm on the training team, but we get to hang out, which is pretty cool because I like Dino and, Dino, you like me, right? Like, I think you like me. You kind of like, will you hang out with me sometime?
I do like you.
Okay.
I would also add in, I like your haircut. Bald guys, you know, there's two types of bald guys. Bald guys with a sense of humor and bald guys who go to prison.
I love it, man. Well, you know, I nearly was the other one and then I came to faith. So that was good. I wouldn't have been the first of my family, but, hey, look, I wanted to have you on here because I have learned a ton from you. In fact, I would say that I was really, for a number of years, a mentor to church planners. And it was really about the time that I met you. Shortly beforehand, guys were saying, well, I'm not a mentor, I'm a coach. And I remember kind of, you know how like when people say stuff and you don't really know what they're talking about, you know, like, but you go, oh, yeah, whatnot, baby. You know what I'm talking about? Like, you don't want to admit, like, I don't really know the difference between coaching and mentoring. I don't want to be that guy, you know, like everyone rolls their eyes and goes, come on, Peyton, get with the program, man. We're into coaching now. But you have really taught me a ton. Once I kind of figured out what it was and listened to you and learned a little bit from you, I actually got a coach. So, you know,
really,
I did. Well, I think he was your coach. I think he was your mentor or trainer, Bob Logan.
Yeah, he was kind of everything, but he was my first coach, and he was a real coach. He was not my mentor at that point. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, he's a sensational guy, and so now I have people practice coaching on me. Not that Bob needs to practice, but I wanted just to give my listeners just a little taste of who you are. So we always like to start with how'd you come to faith, and how'd you get involved in church planting?
Yeah. Good. Well, so I have to get brief time with my dad. My dad was not a believer. My mother was taking me to church. I saw that very clearly early, and I love my dad. But a pastor built relationships with him back in the 60s, before it was cool to build relationships before you win people to Christ. And he drank coffee with him at his restaurant and shared Christ with him, and he came to Jesus. I did see that, but what that did for me more than anything is that put my mother and father on the same page with Jesus. And so they had us in church as children, and a faithful teacher in my children's class said, you guys need Jesus, essentially, long story short. And if you think that that's something that you want, then would you stay and talk to me? And I stayed and talked to her, and it was incredible. It was incredible to me at that point with that small childlike faith that I received Christ at that point, and has followed him since. Like anybody's journey, there's good times and bad times in the early days, especially as a teenager. Things maybe I shouldn't have done, but God's been faithful up to this point, and I'm as amazed by the grace of God when He saves a 7-year-old as when He saves a 70-year-old. It's amazing to me.
Yeah, I agree, man, 100%. I like what Corrie ten Boom said. She shared her testimony. She'd say, "I was saved at 4, and no, Jesus did not tell me I was too young." So that said it all for me. But that is so rad. So I think you did tell me, and I forget stuff a lot, but. How cool is that, man? Like your dad, had a coffee shop. Like that's full on Italian. That must have been good stuff. I'm wanting coffee right now.
It was an Italian restaurant, but everybody drank coffee at the restaurant because they hung out. And plus it was East Tennessee and they had never heard of Italian food. So he had to have coffee and American food.
Well, because my next question was, whoa, your dad, restaurant, people come in to drink coffee. That sounds like the mafia to me. And I know we're not supposed to talk about that, but I'm just saying, if you're in East Tennessee, you were probably okay. You're a little removed from that, right?
Right. But he was brilliant. His name and my name were the same. I was junior, so I was a walking brand because his restaurant was Dino's. So every place I went, I was free advertisement. My nickname in high school was Pizza Pie.
Are you serious?
Yep.
That's rad. Okay, well, just between you and me now, when I see you, that'll be a thing. So that's when wherever we end up. We meet each other in weird spots. So, So here's the thing, man. How did you get involved in church planting? Because I want to talk about your book, which I'll just float the title right now. It's dynamite. It's called Sending Well, a field guide to great church planter coaching. And what's rad about that is you train people all over the country how to coach church planters. And we know that church planters that have been assessed, trained, and coached have an 85% success rate, as opposed to ones who aren't, have a 70% failure rate. So that's huge right there. So tell us a little bit, how did you get involved in church planting? And then we'll dive into the book a bit.
Well, and I didn't come through the door that most people do. And that is that when I was in New Orleans as a pastor back in the late 80s, we were in a very diverse urban area. And so we got involved in church planting. Our church was more traditional structure, 20 minutes from the Superdome across the river, but traditional structure. So what happened was that church planting became a way that we could address the diversity of where we were much more quickly. And so that's what we did. So I became a friend, a mentor as it came to pastoral skills and things like that I actually could offer, and a cheerleader when it came to planting. And that just became my niche. I've been on the support team since then. And so that evolved for me for those. We were involved with 10 different churches over 12 years, and hands-on, and a very diverse group of churches. And then that evolved to me helping from a denominational level, helping churches, creating support teams, sending churches, helping planters network, and providing the needs for planters from the support role. That moved to Cincinnati. And I started learning a little bit more about systems in Cincinnati, because this was a very organic thing to me. It was a very, very, it was just what we did to reach people for Jesus where we were. And so that became more intentional. I got connected with Steve Sjogren. We reconnected recently, and he was the coach. Yeah, he's the coach he's on your coast now. He used to be in Cincinnati and used to be in Tampa.
And so, he over at Rick Warren's now?
I don't know exactly what he's doing. Yeah. I know he's has his own ministry, so I don't think he's connected with Rick at this point. So
here's the thing, man. Like you're talking about how, you were kind of like a cheerleader for him and all that. And, I don't think it matters really, to be honest, like, especially when you learn what coaching is as well, but I don't think it necessarily matters. Like anyone who is a cheerleader or encouragement or a support, I don't think I would care if they're a church planter or not. And in fact, many of the people that have been supports to me over the years have not been church planters. They've just been people that saw my mission, understood who I was and what I was called to do, and rallied around me and were there for me when I needed it.
Well, I think you hit on the commonality. I do think that there's some prerequisites, you would say, for a supporter or a cheerleader to make them more effective. So they've got to buy into God's mission and evangelism, whatever the delivery is, whether it's a church plant. And that's what was attractive to me about church planting, is it helped us be more effective to reach diverse people in New Orleans with the gospel. So there has to be a common heart, although maybe there's not a common experience. So I'm in a 3-year-old church right now in Rock Hill, South Carolina, and I've been engaged on different levels and even led for short periods of time. But when I look in the mirror, I don't see church planter. Yeah, so that's not my identity. But I love church planters. Yeah.
Well, and I think that, really there's that idea that it's a mentor. You have experience in ministry. So that's always important. I've shared this on the podcast before, but, my wife and I have been in marriage counseling for 22 years. We've been married coming up on 21 next month, but for a year before, our elders, I was the interim pastor of a mega church, as a very young man, 22 years old, just getting ready to get married. And they said, hey, you can't afford to jack this up. So we're as an elder board, we're requiring that you go get marriage. And, we just never stopped. We hit the skids like everyone else. We hit our rough times and our good times. But over the years, man, that has been extremely valuable to be able to talk stuff through. Now, I know coaching has a particular aim. Tell my listeners, what is the difference between mentoring and coaching? What does a coach do for a church planter?
So a mentor is critical in the life of a church planter, a pastor, or any other leader. I've had a mentor in my life, Peyton, for about 35 years, same guy. And it's a different kind of relationship. A mentor tends to be more of a long-term relationship than a coach sometimes. A mentor is someone who pours in, and they are like, in our training, we compare a mentor to a personal trainer. A personal trainer says, if you eat what I eat, if you work out like I work out, watch me, and you'll learn everything you need to know. And that's might be a little bit overstated, but I state it to make a point. A mentor is pouring into me, and I need those type of relationships. A coach is different. A coach is like an Uber driver or a taxi driver. He is someone who's going to walk beside me to help me get where I need to go. He's a vehicle, And in fact, the original word coach, before we made it athletic, the original word coach ties into a stagecoach or a mode of travel to help me get from one place to another. So we use Barnabas, Peyton, in Scripture as kind of that walk beside example.
Right.
His generous heart, a good man, full of the Holy Spirit and faith, and an encourager. So when you're nicknamed Son of Encouragement, you've had an effect on a lot of people.
Right. Right.
Versus Pizza Pie, which I don't know. Anyway, that's it.
Well, it's interesting because he's called, he's mentioned at one point he's called an apostle because he was sent out. Same Greek word, but it also says in Acts 13 that he was a prophet. It says they met with prophets and teachers. And I always find this interesting that prophetic type ministry, really, we do this in the training where we do the encouragement exercise. In fact, we just did a whole podcast where I talked about encouragement. I really dipped into this, but, one of the things that we do is really we become almost like a prophetic voice when we encourage people. And that's pretty powerful. So, as church planners listening to this are going, man, that sounds good. Like I need that. And of course you and I know, that how badly they need it, but, a lot of planners are out there. They don't have a mentor. They don't have a coach. They don't have a counselor. Like what I described, they don't have, maybe even a sending pastor. If they look at this and go, I really need to pick a coach out, give us kind of a field guide. Because one of the things that the book really does is it tells from the opposite side how they can pick a coach. But what is a way that these guys can identify who would make a good coach?
Well, I do think there's a profile, Peyton, and I think that everybody in the body of Christ shouldn't be coaches because then all we get is questions and nobody answers them. All we get is listening and nobody's talking. So I don't think it's everybody's role. But when you look for a coach, look for someone who's relational in nature. We believe a coach is a shepherd. He's a shepherd of the soul. He's someone you see characteristics that he's patient and he doesn't have to dominate the conversation. His point of view is not the most important thing in the room. I remember when I was younger.
That's why I'm a bad coach, Dino. That's why no one picks Peyton for a coach.
Well, but I think Peyton, you're a good example of this. See, we're not myopic coach guys. We don't think coaching is the most excellent way. We think coaching is a voice that every planter needs in his life because it's an asking voice. And it is complementary to every single other voice that's in his life. We do this exercise in our training too. I don't know if you've seen it. You may have seen it in orientation, but where that we have people role play the multiple voices in a planter's life. We start with brainstorm. How many, name some voices that are speaking into your life. And they'll say everything from my wife to my this, to my that, to this. And they'll have, Netflix. Yeah. The media. Well, sure. Media. Absolutely.
Too.
Yeah. Yes. There you go. And so, these voices and so we have people assign these voices. We say, now speak into his life and speak in at the same time. And to us, that illustrates the drama of just how many voices are coming at the average church planter. So how redundant would it be, even with the Send Network, to say, now we've got trainers, we've got Peyton Jones, we've got, and we're training trainers who's going to lead planters through processes, doing some teaching, but a lot of coaching through your process too, because I'm familiar with it. But teaching, content, a lot of times they have other relationships. So how redundant would it be to say, now we're going to get Sinesi over here, and he's going to train another voice to tell a planter what to do? It's like, it's ridiculous. It's overkill. So the coach is the asking voice. He has a specific lane and a specific role. He is most effective when he stays in his lane. Even in my growth as a coach, and I think that it's no accident that God took my profile and said, you're the encourager, so we're going to give you a platform. And that's just his grace. If you'd asked me in 2002, say, hey, you need a coach? I go, what's a coach? I don't know what a coach is. But then I reached out to Bob Logan because he was a church planting expert and I wasn't. And I signed an agreement and it said executive coach. And I said, that means he's going to tell me how to do this. But I didn't read the fine print. It's kind of like the website where you check the box. I read and understand, and I agree to all this. And then some dude in a black hood shows up at your house and said, "Okay, dude, you agree to this. Now I'm taking all your family, away from you or something." I check the boxes. I don't read the boxes. I check the boxes and I sign, and that's what I did. And then something revolutionary happened that was really from God. God changed the trajectory of my ministry by Bob staying in his lane and being my coach. I learned early in my coaching days, there were times where I would change lanes, if I thought I had some input when I called myself a coach. And I realized that my effectiveness of helping the planter or the leader, because I've coached a lot of leaders, I noticed that my effectiveness went downhill. I wasn't as focused on really what I was there to do. So when I fell out of love with my own advice, I think my coaching proficiencies really, really went up, and I became more valuable.
That right there, falling out of love with your own advice, I think that's a painful process. I think I'm actually getting there because I'm realizing in certain situations where I'm talking to church planners, I'm sometimes at a loss of, I'm not you, I'm not living, I'm not living in your context. So, how can coaching bring something? What does it do for the church planner that mentoring doesn't?
Well, what it does is it gives the planter a space to reflect and to think, which is really at a premium for not only planters, but most leaders that are over capacity. You're reacting around the clock, and you're also in a panic. So you become an advice addict. So you go to a guy and you say, "Fix me." It's kind of like what drew me to Bob, which I thought he was going to do. Fix me, help me fix this. Give me a quick answer. And so what a coach does is gives you sacred space to process. A great coach is going to get out of the way and give you a disciplined time where you can process out loud and hear God and actually decide between all the options that you have in a certain context.
That's so valuable, man. So I love the idea that really in a way it's kind of drawing out maybe what God has been saying to them, but they haven't been able to really put it into words. And when you force them to slow down and ask them those penetrating questions, they're able to kind of crystallize them and maybe even process in real time with you what's actually going on.
Well, there's a very pragmatic side to coaching as well, Peyton, and that's the fact that when I am overtaxed, I always think about 1 Peter 1:13, be sober-minded, be clear-minded, and move forward. When there's so many things coming at us, we tend to be a little bit paralyzed because we're in a constant state of this, not that type of decisions. And then we have time management issues on top of that. But a great coach could help you sort through what the most important decisions or actions you need to take and be accountable for taking them. So really, if you're investing 2 hours a month in a coach, this is going to sound like an infomercial, but I'm not drumming up business for me because I'm not in that business. I used to be in that business. I'm not in that business. But
that's funny. You were in infomercial business?
No, I was in the coaching sales business.
Oh, I see. I was going to say, wow, are you the guy that you put the spigot on the milk? No, just joking.
Offline, I'll tell you another story about that. Actually, I did do an infomercial in Cincinnati, a gospel infomercial.
Oh,
but that's
rad,
another story.
I need to see footage of that for sure. But we'll talk about that off air.
Yeah. But what I was going to give a guarantee that sounds like an infomercial, and that's that I believe if you invest 2 hours of your time with a great coach, you'll get 8 to 10 hours back.
Wow.
Because you will be that much more productive, just from a pragmatic perspective, just someone who's going to get out of the way, give you your time, skilled and trained and intentional about leading you through a process. You're going to walk out. What we say in the coaching world is if you coach somebody and they don't walk out with an action step, then you did not coach them. You may have had a conversation and it may have been fun, but unless they don't walk out with, and I would say more than one, but the minimum is that he's going to have one step, something he has to immediately do in order to move the ball down the court, or down the field, whatever that might mean in that moment.
That's fantastic. And here's the thing, I know you've got a long history. You've got a long list of guys that you have coached over the years that if we spoke to them, they would probably say, I wouldn't be in ministry if it were not for Dino Sinesi. Literally, they can trace back their longevity and their endurance and stamina to, it was like a word from afar, and it gave strength to my bones and kept me going and kept me in the fight. It's like the guy in my corner, when I'm boxing the enemy. And, for just to shift gears a little bit, our listeners here, our church planners, some of, not all, we don't just have church planners. We have senders listen to this program. We have established church pastors who want to multiply. We have a broad, we have, I don't know. I know we have freaks and weirdos too. They got to be here. But the reality is sitting, listening today is someone who goes, I need that book because I want to, God has gifted and burdened people for sending well. And I think your title of the book, Sending Well, is so apt because if you don't provide coaching for people that you're sending out, you are not sending well. You really are not sending well. They need assessment training and coaching. And the Send It Network decided we're going to put some books together that kind of hit on these topics because we've done the research. We know that this makes a difference. So tell them a little bit, just give a quick, maybe kind of summary of the book. Not obviously giving all the answers of you can't unpack it in 2 minutes, but just give us a little synopsis of what you lay out in there.
Yeah, well, and the whole idea of sending well is that even in our tradition, in Southern Baptist tradition, and in a lot of ways, I'm encouraged by this, and I cut my teeth in this sending, going culture, right? But oftentimes we get so focused on the duty of sending and the duty of going, we forget the fact that there's the way we send is as important as the sending, because the health of the movement and the effectiveness of the movement that God's doing through us is going to be as a result of sending well, not just sending. And then again, the duty bound says more, send more. And of course that makes sense to send more, but it goes back to how do we send more? By sending well. That's how we send more, because healthy leaders plant healthy churches that reach lost people with the gospel. And so it's all about the health of the movement. That's the idea about sending well. And we add to that on our side, Peyton, we say healthy coaches coach healthy planters that plant healthy churches.
Yeah, that's so true. And, I think that one of the things that I've just been meditating on in the life of the Apostle Paul is that he was go. He'd been pent up for 12 years, and then he was like a bull out of the gates, and he wanted to go fast, and he did. On his first missionary journey, he leaves Antioch. He's been there a year. Massive explosion. Goes to Cyprus, plants multiple churches on the island of Cyprus, then goes to Turkey, plants along the coast, goes up into the hill country of Galatia. This is all on his first missionary journey. And he's going fast, but then he gets back and he realizes these are unhealthy church plants. And you see the shift as you look at Paul's second and third missionary journey, where there's still speed and urgency, but there's this new emphasis on health. And, I think like just having this conversation, this has been something for me in the past week or 2 weeks that's really been a meditation of mine, because I'm the guy who loves to go fast, but I've also seen a lot of narratives that I would change and go back and interject myself into the story and do different things if I could.
Well, and I think that the Bible contains an ethic, a missionary ethic and a biblical ethic that says that the way we send is as important as the sending, because when you look at how Paul addressed churches in Philippi, and how he even addressed Corinth, which is, by the way, what I'm working on, how he addressed Corinth as this immature church as a builder. You see that his heart. He wasn't mad at Corinth as he was saying, "Man, you are God's building. I'm a master builder." So the development, Paul's saying that the development of the believer was as important as the multiplication of the believer, because in the same way, that's where multiplication happens, is out of health.
Right.
And Jesus, John 20:21, as the Father sent me, so send I you. He breathed on the disciples and said, receive the Holy Spirit. So it's not just dropping people out of planes, whether they're pastors or planters or mission. Somebody's like, go, 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 go. But that's how you go. So the heart of sending well is, I really wanted to simplify this, because as I became a coach, I realized that coaching is a discipline more than it is a talent or a skill. And it is also being persistent, knowing what I'm to accomplish and being persistent. So I hope that what readers would find is, wow, this is like really simple.
Right.
And so I would hope to turn chess into checkers. You could spend thousands and thousands of dollars being trained. And I have been trained by some of the best, including Bob Logan, including Keith Webb. I've been trained by some of the best. I hope to continue to be trained. But the best way to learn to coach is actually to coach.
So you know what? And that, I knew you were going to say that. So the book, guys, is Sending Well, and it is a field guide to coaching church planners. You can grab the book wherever fine Christian books are sold. And as my final question, because we're out of time, we ask this every podcast. The players change, the contenders switch up. But Dino Sanesi, if you were to get into a physical fist fight with Bob Logan, who would win? I'm asking an Italian this.
Is that a coaching question, or do you want me to answer it a certain way?
No, I think that's a coaching question. I think you have to think this one through.
Are you giving me time to reflect, and are you drawing out, or are you pouring in? That's what I'm asking.
I need to read your book, man. I don't even know how to answer that. But if you didn't know how to answer that, grab this book.
Yeah, but I did. But I would say that it's you picked somebody that is so significant in my life, coached me for many years, but I could get some sidebars from him if I'm lucky, and he could actually give me a little advice. So I'm not the competitor maybe that you are. So Bob would probably kick my butt. So
he's huge.
If you know,
he's a big dude.
Yeah, he is big. He's lanky. So I would tear into him, but the reach, you know how they say in basketball, he's got such a reach. Yeah. He would probably, he'd do the Spock thing on my neck or something when I was trying to do. Yeah, so I would lose.
He would. His arms are longer than your legs. Let's be honest. Let's be fair.
I think that's fair.
And yeah. But you have that like short man syndrome, fighting spirit, Italian at that. I mean, you could use the break out the Dino on him. You know what I'm saying?
Well, let me give you this. There would be one contingency. I probably couldn't beat him, but I know somebody that could.
I love it. Yeah.
So if he won that fight, there would be a mysterious knock on his door. He'd go into a convenience store to get a soft drink or something, and he would walk out with a broken leg.
That's right. Me. Beware the family in East Tennessee. That's all Dino's saying to you.
Or I got people on the West Coast. So even for you, I got people. Yeah, I got people.
Oh man, you know what? I might want to re-record this interview now knowing that. I don't know. But hey, Dino, thank you so much for being on the show, man. Thank you for what you do for church planner coaches all over America. And I know there's people worldwide. Can't thank you enough for how you're pouring into this generation of coaches for church planners. And honestly, man, even though we work together and I consider you a friend, it's an honor still to have you on here.
Well, the honor's mine. And just to think that the Father would use me in this unbelievable, unscripted way is an honor as well, that I could help guys, that I could walk beside them and encourage them, but train others to do so, because it's not rocket surgery. It's just having a heart and being persistent, shepherding the souls of others. Yeah.
Dino, if they want to connect with you, where's a good place to track you down and find you?
Well, they could use my email, dsanesi @nam.net, and I'll be glad to connect. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Twitter @Dino Sanesi. And so any of those ways, I think would be great, and love to help any way I could. Okay.
Well, guys, this has been Hardcore Church Planning. My guest is Dino Sanesi. Arnold, sign us out.
Remember, if you are called to church planting, go hardcore or go home.
You've been listening to Hardcore Church Planning. Hardcore Church Planning has been brought to you by the Church Planner Podcast and the Church Planner Magazine, which is available in the App Store for both Apple and Android devices. If you like this episode, leave us a positive review. If you didn't like this episode, we'll be happy to give you your money back.